Do Sheldon and Amy deserve to win the Nobel Prize in Physics? Here's what real Nobel Laureates Robert Blumlein, Frank Wilczek, and John C. Mather has to say about them. Robert Blumlein, professor of physics and applied physics at Stanford University, won the Nobel Prize in 1998 for the explanation of the fractional quantum Hall effect. Robert said that there are several well-known cases where the metric has been complicated, so whoever publishes the work first gets the prize. Robert Blumlein thinks that Sheldon and Amy deserve to win the Nobel Prize. Robert said, "The somewhat lighter answer is that it's hard to take sides because the show is true. Nobody could make all that stuff up. It actually happens in real life. Trust me, right down to specific discussions people have and specific words they use in them." Robert and his wife love The Big Bang Theory because the show actually reflected their real-life experiences, which were more relatable to them compared to the general audience. Robert said, "I always found the show so true to life that it was hard to watch. My wife became completely addicted to it. She was married to one, you see? So she could see way more humor in the show than everybody else could. So the show isn't really ending. It will live forever in the little corners in the world such as the one I inhabit." Frank Wilczek. Theoretical physicist Frank Wilczek was awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of asymptotic freedom in the strong interaction in 2004. The discovery of supersymmetry was completely accidental, yet an outstanding hypothesis. Frank Wilczek said, "A lot of thought and work goes into it. While there are surely gray areas and high politics, there's an overwhelming consensus that the prize is almost always awarded appropriately. So I don't think that the nominations received from a couple of administrators could decisively affect the process is at all realistic." Frank Wilczek thinks that in the premiered scenario of the Big Bang Theory show, Amy and Sheldon shouldn't get the prize so promptly. There are a lot of procedures and protocols that must be followed. Frank said, "A scenario where a surprising experimental discovery of a fundamentally new physical phenomenon could get a quick Nobel Prize isn't crazy. It's happened several times." In viewing past mistakes and criticism, the Royal Swedish Academy of Science, which awards the Nobel Prize in Physics, is now accurately set aside to issues of squeezing out women or worthy junior collaborators. There's no way that could happen just because some lab director or university president suggested it. John C. Mather. Cosmologist John C. Mather is quite famous for his discovery of the black-body form and the anisotropy of the cosmic microwave background radiation in 2006, which eventually led him to Nobel Prize. Mather said that the Nobel Prize is a very unfair award. Just a couple of people cannot work on theory and prove them, especially since there are hundreds of fascinating problems out there. Mather said, in the case of Sheldon and Amy, they are the ones who know the best. Mather continued, in Einstein's case, many people are still discussing added contributions of his wife, who did not share the prize but received all the money in her divorce agreement. I also note that people trying to get the prize can be tempted to behave very badly. I've always thought of Frodo Baggins and the ring. So Sheldon and Amy are not the only ones with a problem. That's all, guys. If you like this video, why don't you give us a thumbs up? Comment down below what you think about it. And if you want more Big Bang Theory facts, revelations, and Easter eggs, why don't you subscribe to our channel?